The twins opened their Christmas presents. Empty. No toys. No letters. Not even a ribbon. Their father stood in the corner, silent. Their stepmother laughed. But their mother didn't shout. She didn't post a single thing online. She made one call. To a man the mistress didn't know existed. And the next morning, the most exclusive stores in the city shut down for a private event. Only 3 people were invited. A mother and her daughters. This isn't about money. This is about power. The kind that doesn't raise its voice. The kind that doesn't need followers to feel seen. This is the story of a mother's restraint, a billionaire's quiet support, and the kind of revenge that doesn't shout. It simply replaces what was broken with something better. If you've ever believed that children deserve protection, not pity, stay, like, share, subscribe. You're watching Mr. Charles Stories. Naylor Rowe didn't expect anything from her ex-husband. Not during the holidays. Not after the divorce. Not since he let someone else take over what used to be sacred, fatherhood. But she didn't expect this. She stood near the hallway arch, arms crossed, watching her twin daughters open 2 perfectly wrapped boxes that had been delivered late that night. The girls, Mila and Ilara, both 7, sat cross-legged in front of the fireplace, matching velvet coats, fresh braids done that morning. The boxes sparkled in the glow of the tree lights, silver foil, white ribbons, tags that read, "Open now, with love." They untied the bows, lifted the lids, and blinked. There was nothing inside, just crinkled tissue paper, and one small round mirror in each box. Mila looked up first. "Mom, I think they forgot something." Ilara nodded. "Mine's empty too." Naila stepped closer, took the boxes, looked inside. No note, no mix-up slip, no message. She exhaled through her nose. Quiet, steady. Her daughters watched her carefully, testing the mood. "Don't worry," Naila said softly. "Not everything people give is worth keeping." She closed the lids gently and set them aside. 2 days ago, Brantley Culden had called. "Naila, listen. Kalina's hosting a Christmas tree lighting at the house on the 23rd. Tasteful. A few family friends. It's nothing crazy." She stayed silent. "The girls could come," he continued. "It's been a while. They'd like the lights. Maybe stay for an hour." Naila didn't speak right away. She knew what this was. It wasn't about the twins. It was about optics, about Kalina. "I'll ask them," she said finally. "If they want to go, I'll send them with the cards they made you." He didn't thank her, just said, "Great." "The driver will come by." The girls had returned a few hours ago. Quieter than usual. No mention of the party, no updates about the lights. They just handed her a folded note from Brantley's housekeeper. Arrived on time. Left with treats. No issues. They didn't talk about Kalina, or Brantley, or the boxes, until now. Naila crouched down in front of them. "Did you have fun at Daddy's house?" Mila shrugged. "There were a lot of people," Ilara added. "Kalina said we could open one gift early." They both looked toward the empty boxes. "And when you did, we didn't get one. We just got mirrors." Ilara tried to smile. "Maybe the real gift is not opening anything." Naila's stomach turned, but her face didn't show it. She nodded once, then sat on the floor beside them. "My gift is that you're both home now. That's enough for me." Naila didn't cry. She didn't text Brantley, didn't post cryptic quotes on Instagram, didn't call anyone to vent. She stood in her quiet kitchen, lit only by the under-cabinet lights. The velvet coats hung neatly near the door. The twins' school drawings were still stuck to the fridge. She reached for the top cabinet and took down a dark green box. Inside, an old phone, small, prepaid, untouched since the summer before the divorce. She'd kept it only for one number. She powered it on, waited, tapped contacts. There was only one saved. Jalen Verrick, a man who had once told her, "If you ever need a room emptied or a heart centered, I'm one call away." She pressed call. It rang once. Then he answered. Calm, steady. "Naila, She didn't have to explain. He didn't ask. She simply said, "It wasn't about me this time. It was the girls." And Jalen replied, "Then we begin at dawn." The screen went black. Naila turned off the light and went to bed without another word. The next morning, the girls woke up before the sun, not because they expected anything more, but because they still hoped their father would call. He didn't. Naila made them breakfast, cinnamon toast and sliced apples, the way they liked. They sat at the kitchen table, legs swinging, their voices soft. They talked about a book they were reading together. They didn't bring up the boxes, not once. But when Ilara leaned her head on her sister's shoulder and whispered, "It's okay if people forget us," Naila paused mid-pour of her tea. She set the kettle down, quietly. "I don't think people forget," she said. "Some just pretend they don't see what matters." The girls looked at her and then went back to their drawings. Naila smiled. But inside, something rooted deeper than hurt had taken hold. She waited until they went upstairs. Then she stepped into the sunroom, her workspace. Stacks of soft-woven fabric and winter samples lined the edges, but she walked past them, opened her laptop, and checked for one email. It was already there. From an assistant she didn't recognize. Subject, private access confirmed, 12:24. Time, 9 m.m. sharp. No cameras, no billing, no press. Location, Chicago Gold District, multiple entries secured. No signature, no name. Just one line at the bottom. Nothing in the box was the real message. Let's correct that. She closed the laptop and exhaled. By 8:45 the next morning, the car arrived. A deep charcoal Bentley with no plates. The driver didn't ask for names. He simply opened the door. Mila and Ilara looked at their mother. "We're not going back to Daddy's, are we?" Naila shook her head. "No, baby. We're going somewhere quiet." The girls climbed in, coats zipped, mittens on. Naila followed, carrying nothing but her small leather bag. They arrived at the Gold District entrance. Where most stores displayed velvet ropes and flashing signage, today was different. A single printed sign hung on each door, closed for private holiday experience. No lights, no people, no music. Inside the first store, they were greeted by a woman in all black. Soft voice, no introductions. She simply knelt to the twins' level and asked, "Would you like to pick something that feels like you?" Mila looked at Ilara. They didn't rush. Naila stood back, her coat still buttoned. She said nothing. The girls walked aisle by aisle, picking scarves and boots. Things they liked. Things made with care. No loud packaging. No plastic toys. No glitter pens. One of them pointed to a leather-bound journal. "I want this," Ilara said, "so I can write my own stories next year." The attendant nodded. "It's yours." Across the street, another store had unlocked its doors. Same sign, same silence. Inside, no other shoppers. Just a soft-spoken stylist who led them to a table set with hot cocoa and a few simple pastries. No photos, no brand tags, no lectures. Everything was soft. Everything was quiet. Everything was earned. The third store didn't even have its lights on. They walked in. A man in a grey scarf nodded at Naila. He didn't speak. Didn't need to. He handed her an envelope. Inside, one more stop. "Thank you for not shouting. Your daughters will remember." Naila tucked it away. Not a single thing they touched that day had a price tag. Not because it was free, but because it had already been paid for. Meanwhile, across the city, Kalina opened her phone. Her stylist was late. The boutique she ordered from was closed, and her nails weren't done yet. She refreshed her calendar. Tonight's gala was still happening, and she'd prepared for it all week. The media would be there. She'd sent out tips to a few outlets. She had the dress, the jewelry, the angle. But when her assistant called, breathless, and said, "You're trending on local news, but not for the reason you planned," Kalina froze. "What do you mean?" "There's something going around. The luxury district, some kind of private event. They say it's for a woman with twins." Kalina blinked. What woman? They didn't say, but the stores you go to, they were all shut down this morning. Press can't get inside. Kalina ended the call. And for the first time in weeks, she felt a twist in her chest. Not fear, not anger, but something quieter, like someone had moved the spotlight without telling her. By noon, Nyla and the girls were home. They carried no bags, only 3 small boxes, and 2 handwritten letters from the store attendants. Nyla unpacked them slowly, then watched her daughters sit on the living room floor and unwrap soft leather gloves and a wooden puzzle. "Elara," Myla said, holding up a charm bracelet, "do you think Daddy's going to call today?" Elara paused, then said, "I think we got the call that mattered." Nyla leaned against the doorframe. She smiled, not because someone had taken revenge for her, not because someone had spent money, but because someone had understood that dignity doesn't raise its voice. It arrives without needing to be announced, and it leaves something better in its place. 2 days earlier, when Brantley called her, Nyla had already known something was coming. There was a tone in his voice, smooth but distracted, like he was reading from someone else's message. He didn't say the girls' names, didn't ask how they were doing in school, just jumped right in, like his words were on a schedule. "Kalina's planning a Christmas lighting at the house," he'd said. "It's tasteful, few people, nothing flashy." Nyla had looked at the paint drying on the swatchboard beside her. Holiday tones, muted emeralds and cinnamon browns. She didn't interrupt him. "The girls would like it," he added, like it was an afterthought. She glanced at the time. The call came in just after he'd usually be seen walking into press events with Kalina on his arm. Always the same smile, always silent, letting her talk. Brantley had become a fixture in someone else's life, and her daughters were background. Still, Nyla said, "If they want to go, I'll let them." "You'll let them," he repeated. She didn't flinch. "They're not props. If they want to see you, I'll send them. If not, we'll be here." That was how it had been since the divorce. Brantley could ask. She would listen. But nothing moved unless her daughters chose it. He didn't respond to that. Just said, "The car will be there at 6 on the 23rd, and the line went dead. The day came faster than she liked. The sun dropped early, snow threatening to fall but never arriving. Nyla dressed the girls herself. Matching velvet coats in cranberry, soft white earmuffs, tights under their dresses so they wouldn't feel cold. They had made cards for their father, glitter glue and soft paper. She placed them in a white envelope and tucked it into Myla's pocket. "Don't forget to give it to him," she said gently. "And be kind, even if others aren't." Myla nodded. Elara tilted her head. "Will Kalina be there?" "Yes." "Do we have to hug her?" Nyla kneeled, leveled her eyes with theirs. "You don't have to do anything that makes you uncomfortable. You can be polite, but don't pretend." The girls seemed to take that in. At 7, they were smart, quiet, observant. They didn't cry easily, but Nyla had watched them flinch when certain names came up. Especially when Brantley cancelled plans last minute. Especially when Kalina replaced moments with posts. At 5:57 p.m., the car arrived. Glossy, black, the kind you could see your reflection in. The driver said nothing, just opened the back door. Nyla kissed both girls on their foreheads. "You'll be back by 9. Elara hesitated. "Will you wait up?" "I always do." And then they were gone. The Colden estate was already dressed like a winter showroom. Massive white trees, fake snow scattered across hedges, music spilling from hidden speakers. Kalina stood at the entrance, perfect posture, pale gold gown, lipstick the same shade as the champagne she held. As the twins stepped out, a photographer adjusted his lens. Kalina knelt down, arms spread. "Look who's here," she sang out, the kind of voice that sounded sweet in pictures but cold in person. Myla stepped forward slowly. Elara hung back. Kalina gave them a quick hug, then turned toward the crowd behind her. "These two are his," she said with a laugh, gesturing to Brantley, who stood near the steps adjusting his sleeve. "But they look like her." No one responded. The joke didn't land. Kalina waved it off with a sip of her drink. Brantley approached, hands in his coat pockets. "Girls, hey." Myla handed him the envelope. "We made something for you." He blinked. "Oh, thanks." He tucked it into his coat without opening it. Inside, the tree lighting had already started. Naila wasn't there, but she would later hear what happened, through whispers and quiet murmurs from those who still respected her. The girls were handed 2 gift boxes midway through the event. Kalina made sure the press was looking. She even announced it. "Special early gifts for the Carlden girls, open now." The music paused. The lights dimmed. Cameras flashed. Myla and Ilara opened the sparkling boxes. Tissue paper, mirrors, nothing else. Ilara looked up first. "Is it broken?" Kalina laughed. "Real gifts come from real love. I guess yours are still in the works." A few people laughed awkwardly. One woman turned away. Brantley didn't say a word. He looked down at his shoes. The twins sat still, boxes in their laps, unsure what to do. Kalina moved on quickly, lifting a glass, smiling at the cameras. No one checked on the girls. They were taken back to the waiting car by a silent maid. When the girls returned home later that night, Naila saw it before they said anything. The silence, the way Ilara clutched her mittens tight, the shimmer in Myla's eyes that never quite dropped into tears. She didn't push. "Did you get to light the tree?" she asked softly. "We weren't allowed," Ilara said. "There were too many people," Myla added. They didn't mention the boxes. Until they were getting ready for bed, Naila was brushing out their braids when Ilara said, "I think Kalina was mad we came." "Why do you say that? She gave us gifts with nothing inside. Just mirrors." Naila paused. "She said, 'Love gives real gifts,'" Myla whispered. "And maybe we don't get those." Naila crouched down, brushing the strands off their shoulders. "You know what love gives?" she asked gently. "What?" "Consistency, a warm coat, a hand to hold. Words that make you feel safe." The girls nodded slowly. And for that night, that was enough. But for Naila, that wasn't going to be the end of it. Naila didn't sleep much after the girls went to bed. She sat at her kitchen table, one leg tucked under her, the other planted on the cold floor. Her tea had gone cold. Her phone stayed face down. The empty boxes Kalina had sent were now stacked silently near the back door, symbols of insult dressed as generosity. She had seen many things during her marriage to Brantley Carlden. Evasions, excuses, deflections. But this wasn't about her. It was about their daughters. And the moment a person targets a child to strike the parent, that's when dignity stops being a choice. It becomes action. She opened her drawer, pulled out the old phone, the one she hadn't touched since her first year post-divorce. It powered on in seconds. There was only one number saved. She dialed. "Naila," the voice said instantly. Low, warm, centered. She didn't ask how he knew it was her. "Jalen," she said quietly, "I need a favor. I already saw the coverage. Tell me what you want done." Naila didn't speak right away. She wasn't used to asking for anything. But this wasn't about pride. This was about repair. They humiliated my daughters in front of cameras. They came home quiet. They thought it was their fault. Jalen didn't interrupt. He didn't sigh in sympathy or fumble for comfort. He just listened. "You once said you empty rooms and center hearts," she said. "Tomorrow morning, I need both." "I'll handle it," he said. "Your only task is to keep their morning clear." She paused. "No media, no attention, no receipts either," he replied. "It'll be invisible, but unforgettable." She ended the call and looked at the clock. 2:11 a.m. For the first time in a long time, she exhaled without holding tension in her spine. At 7:30 a.m., Myla woke first, then Ilara. Their footsteps were soft, their voices softer. Naila helped them dress in warm layers. Soft sweaters, leggings, coats. "We're not going to school?" Ilara asked. "No," Naila replied. "Today's not for school. It's just for us." They didn't ask why. but they held her hands tighter as they walked out to the waiting car. The driver nodded without speaking. No company logo on the door, just a clean vehicle with heated seats and soft jazz playing in the background. The ride was silent, peaceful. They arrived at a part of the city Naila hadn't visited in over a year. Gold District, lined with boutiques known for locking out regulars and letting in royalty. But today, every store had the same sign, closed for private holiday experience. A woman in a muted grey suit met them at the curb. "Ilara." "Mila," she said with a nod. "We've been expecting you." The girls looked up at their mother. Naila gave a small nod. Inside the first store, the air was warm, the lights low. No music, no loud greeting, no pushy salespeople. Instead, a stylist guided them to a curated rack of items. Child-sized winter coats, leather gloves in pastel tones, classic wooden toys on a table made of oak. "Pick only what makes you smile," the stylist said. "Today is not about price." Ilara held up a puzzle box. "Can we play with this here?" "Of course." Mila touched a deep red scarf. "Is this real wool?" "Yes," the woman replied gently. "From the same fabric line your mom once designed with." Naila blinked. "How do you—" But the woman didn't explain. She simply said, "Some people know how to pay attention. Others know how to protect." They left that store with 2 small boxes, wrapped by hand in brown paper and red twine. Nothing flashy, everything intentional. The second store had a reading corner set up. Children's books lined a low shelf. Plush chairs, hot chocolate in ceramic mugs. They were offered no menus, just comfort. Each girl was given a soft-bound journal and a pencil set. No screens, no logos. Ilara opened to the first page and wrote something in silence. When she showed it to Naila later, it read, "We didn't open the wrong box. The box opened us." Naila looked at her daughter, chest tightening. She kissed her head and said nothing. By the time they exited the third store, the sun had begun to rise properly. The man in the grey scarf waited by the car. He nodded to Naila and handed her a folded card. She opened it once they were seated. Dignity doesn't retaliate. It remembers. And it corrects. Nothing else was written. But she recognized the handwriting. The girls were tired. They leaned into her sides as the car pulled away. Naila looked out at the quiet streets and felt no urge to tell anyone what had happened. She wouldn't post it, wouldn't hint at it in conversation, wouldn't even bring it up to Brantley. That morning wasn't for them. It was for Mila. It was for Ilara. And somewhere in the silence, it was for her too. By noon, news had started to circulate. Reporters at the gala from the previous night had begun connecting dots. 5 luxury stores closed for private bookings. On Christmas Eve, anonymous stylists and child-sized collections displayed only for a single family. One reporter tweeted a photo of the store windows. "Who is the woman behind this private holiday in Chicago's Gold District?" Another posted, "Luxury with no press. Someone very powerful wanted this day to stay quiet." Kalina saw the tweets. She was in her suite, getting her hair styled for the Christmas Eve gala. Brantley was downstairs, talking to some PR consultant about minimizing noise from yesterday. She tilted her phone, scrolled again, clicked on a name, then paused. The thread had just updated. A new photo. From the corner of the boutique. No faces. Just a blurry image of 2 small girls walking beside a tall woman in a green coat. No tags, no names. But Kalina knew. She knew that coat. She knew those braids. She dropped her phone onto the floor. Her stylist looked up. "Everything okay?" Kalina smiled stiffly. Fine. But she wasn't. Because for the first time since she entered Brantley's life, she wasn't the most watched woman in the room. She had thrown the first blow. She had used children as pawns. And now, the city was watching someone else. Someone who didn't even try. Have you ever watched someone hurt children just to get at the parent? Do you believe real love never needs to show off to prove itself? If you've seen quiet dignity win where cruelty tried to take over, like this video, share it and comment below, what does protection look like to you? Subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more powerful narratives where silence speaks louder than status. Before Jalen Verrick ever owned 41% of an international luxury group. Before Naila ever married Brantley Cullen. Before quiet became her strongest armor, there was a moment. One dinner, one offer, one refusal. It had been 6 years ago. Naila was a textile consultant working with a boutique label based out of Minneapolis. Quiet, focused, deeply respected in her niche. Not flashy, not loud, just consistent. She was in Chicago for a supplier exhibition and had been asked by her firm to attend a private networking event hosted at the penthouse of a major investor. She didn't plan to stay long. She didn't like industry games. She didn't do flattery. She hated when business felt like theater. She walked in alone. Neutral heels, hair back, burnt olive wrap dress she'd designed herself. Jalen Verrick noticed her the moment she refused to sit at the main table. He was used to everyone trying to get close, but she wasn't trying at all. He walked over, set his glass down and said, "That dress wasn't made for attention, but it earned mine anyway." She looked up slowly. "That's not a compliment. That's an observation disguised as flattery." He tilted his head. "Maybe, but it's still true." She didn't smile. "I work in fabric. I don't chase it." "I don't chase either," he replied. "I offer. And I walk away." That night, he offered her a consulting contract that would have quadrupled her income. Private studio, full control, 6-figure budget. She declined, not because she didn't trust him, but because Brantley had just made a new promise. He wanted to support her business. He wanted her home more often. He wanted her available. And Naila, still believing in partnership back then, said yes to her husband and no to the billionaire. Jalen didn't hold it against her. He simply nodded once and said, "If you ever need a room emptied or a heart centered, I'm one call away." They never saw each other again, but he never changed his number. Back in the present, that call she made after the empty Christmas boxes, he answered on the first ring. At that same moment, Brantley was sitting inside his corner office in Midtown. The holiday event had passed. Kalina had made the rounds. Press had posted. The twins had been dropped off with no issues. Everything should have been calm, but it wasn't. His phone buzzed, over and over. Notifications, mentions, threads, not about him, not about Kalina. It was about a mother of twins, a mystery figure, private holiday store bookings. He clicked a photo, fuzzy, blurry, but he recognized the backs of their coats. He leaned back in his chair, uncomfortable. Kalina walked in 10 minutes later, holding her phone like it bit her. "You seeing this?" she asked. "They're calling her Chicago's quiet heiress." Who the hell did she call? Brantley didn't answer. Because he knew. Jalen's name didn't show up in press, didn't trend, didn't need to. He'd built a legacy by staying off the radar and moving entire industries with a whisper. And he never forgot people like Naila, women who chose quiet over power, love over spotlight, stability over status. She'd made the mistake of marrying a man who didn't protect her. But she hadn't made that mistake twice. She never remarried, never called Jalen again, never used him. Until now. And he answered with precision. The day of the private store closures, Jalen had already called his logistics director before Naila even hung up. "I want 5 flagship stores closed by morning," he'd said. "No cameras, no press, no brands, just dignity." His assistant asked, "May I ask who the client is, sir?" "She's not a client," Jalen answered. "She's a reminder, and this time, no one touches her daughters without consequence." He didn't go to the stores himself. He didn't need to. He handled things the way power should, quietly, effectively, and with grace. That same morning, Kalina stood in front of her bathroom mirror reapplying her lipstick. She kept adjusting her appearance like the problem was in the reflection. She had done everything right, on paper. She had the man, the house, the headlines. So why did one quiet woman shake her foundation? It wasn't Naila's looks, wasn't her voice. It was the fact that Nayela didn't need to be seen, to be felt. And Kalina? She needed every light in the room just to feel real. Nayela didn't tell the girls who arranged the morning experience. She didn't need to, because dignity doesn't name names. It just creates space for healing. And when her daughters smiled without looking over their shoulders, when they sat in the back seat of that silent car, softly humming their favorite song, Nayela knew. This time, the lesson wasn't for them. It was for the world. Some people throw money to be remembered. Others build character so deeply they're unforgettable without ever being seen. Later that evening, Nayela sat at her work table, watching the last of the sunlight pull back through the windows. The twins were upstairs, laughing softly while building a puzzle they had picked out earlier. No loud music, no TikToks, just warmth, focus, and calm. She didn't touch her sewing machine that night, didn't open a single client email, didn't sketch. She sat still, not out of exhaustion, but because stillness after survival felt earned. Her phone buzzed. Not the old one, the current one, Brantley. She let it ring. Then again, and again. 3 calls, no voicemail. She didn't answer, not because she wanted to punish him, but because she already knew what he'd say. And it wouldn't be about the girls. He'd say, "Why are people saying you shut down the Gold District?" He'd say, "Are you trying to make Kalina look bad?" He might even say, "I didn't know the boxes were empty." And none of that mattered, because he had looked away. He had heard Kalina's remarks, and he hadn't opened the handmade cards his daughters gave him. The worst part wasn't the silence, it was the choice. Meanwhile, Kalina sat in a chair at their downtown apartment, bristling. She had spent 2 years trying to overwrite Nayela. She learned the girls' birthdays, found out their favorite shows, started calling them bonus babies to her followers online. But the twins never opened up. And Nayela? She never reacted. She didn't call to complain, didn't warn her off, didn't post screenshots. She was the kind of woman Kalina didn't understand, the kind who let her be loud, then quietly shifted the entire conversation without saying a word. And now, Kalina was watching luxury Twitter explode with blind guesses, photos, speculation, conspiracy theories. Who was the woman behind the silent Christmas takeover? Why were luxury stores closed with no PR campaign? Who protects a woman like that? Kalina tapped through dozens of comments. One caught her eye. Sometimes the people with the least to prove the most. She dropped her phone and cursed. Brantley walked in moments later, holding his coat. He looked drained. "She's not answering," he said flatly. "Of course she's not," Kalina snapped. "She doesn't need to." He looked at her. For the first time in a long while. Really looked at her. Not through her. Not around her. At her. "Why did you give them those boxes?" Kalina froze. He had never asked her a direct question like that before. Not about the girls. Not about anything that mattered. "I thought it was funny," she said, trying to sound casual. "Mirrors, self-reflection, you know? They're 7, and you humiliated them." She scoffed. "Don't act like you weren't standing right there. You didn't say anything either." He blinked. She saw it land. That he had looked away. That he had let her lead. That his daughters walked out of their house humiliated. And he didn't stop it. And Nayela hadn't said a word. But now the entire city was talking about her. She wasn't even in the room. And still, she owned it. Back in Lake Forest, Nayela turned the phone off completely. She sat beside the girls now, watching as Myla traced puzzle pieces, and Ilara looked up from her journal. "Mama," Ilara asked, "do people know what happened yesterday?" Nayela looked at her carefully. "What do you mean?" "Like, on the internet, or on the news?" Nayela smiled faintly. "Maybe, but that part isn't ours to worry about." Myla spoke without looking up. "They laughed at us, Mommy, like we didn't deserve anything." Nayela reached out and placed her hand over both of theirs. "People laugh at what they don't understand. But that doesn't mean they're right." They were quiet for a moment. Then Ilara whispered, "I think I understand you more now." Naila tilted her head. "Me? Yeah. Why you don't shout? Why you don't fight? You just fix things." Naila blinked, the corner of her mouth trembling with restraint. "I don't fix everything," she said quietly. "But you fixed that," Mila replied. "You made us feel like we mattered again." Naila didn't respond. She couldn't. Not without tears slipping down her face, so she nodded, pulled them close, and let the silence finish the sentence. Later that night, the old phone buzzed once. No call. Just a message. From Jalen. Correction complete. No further trace. "Unless you want one." She typed 2 words in reply. "Thank you." He sent one more message. "You did more than survive. You changed the script." Far across the country, Jalen stood on a balcony surrounded by pine trees. He watched the snow falling lightly against the darkening sky. He didn't save women. That was never the goal. He answered only when they chose to rise. And Naila hadn't called for revenge. She had called for dignity. He respected that more than anything. And quietly, with no one watching, he raised his glass of cider and whispered, "To the ones who never needed applause, but always deserved it." At exactly 9:02 a.m. on Christmas Eve, the first post went live. A blurry image. A tweet. No names. But it was enough. The caption read, "Gold District shuts down 5 stores for a private holiday. No public explanation, no press access. Who has that kind of pull?" By 9:12 a.m., it had been shared over 2,000 times. By 9:20 a.m., news blogs had begun speculating. Some said it was a royal from the Middle East. Others guessed a discreet celebrity elopement. A few theorized it was a billionaire's child custody peace offering. No one guessed the truth. And that's exactly how Jalen Verrick preferred it. Inside her Lake Forest home, Naila didn't check the news. She didn't need to. The girls were still asleep, curled beside each other with their journals clutched to their chests like soft pillows. She sat on the edge of the couch, robe wrapped tight, eyes on the snowy street beyond the window. She knew what today meant, and what it didn't. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't to show off. It was course correction, and it had already served its purpose. At 10:15 a.m., Brantley walked into his downtown office lobby, distracted. He had 5 missed calls from corporate sponsors who wanted clarity about the Gold District rumors. They wanted to know who was powerful enough to shut down 5 flagship locations on Christmas Eve without telling anyone. Kalina had left earlier that morning, saying she needed a reset. She hadn't looked him in the eye once. He pressed the elevator button and rubbed his temple. There was a strange taste in his mouth. Shame, perhaps, maybe guilt, but too late. The girls hadn't asked to leave early the night before. They hadn't said they had fun. They hadn't hugged him. They had just walked out of the mansion in silence, holding empty boxes. By noon, the media frenzy had reached local broadcast stations. One anchor read from the teleprompter, "In an unexpected shift this Christmas Eve, 5 luxury retailers in Chicago's Gold District closed for a private holiday experience. All stores declined to comment. No names have been released. No photos officially confirmed. But what we do know is, power this silent is rare." Kalina sat at a cafe across the city, watching the screen behind the counter. She wore sunglasses, a heavy scarf, no makeup. Not to go incognito, but because she didn't want anyone seeing her hollow eyes. She sipped her overpriced ginger tea with trembling fingers. The anchor on TV smiled. "They're calling it the quiet shutdown. No logos, no drama. Just presents." Kalina muttered under her breath. Presents? That woman didn't say a word. And that was the point. Because while she had been curating attention, Naila had been curating impact. In a quiet high-rise near the Chicago River, Jalen Verrick watched from a private conference room. He wasn't in Idaho this time. He had flown in quietly last night. No security, no entourage. He sat with his assistant, a mug of black tea in one hand, tablet in the other. "Did you see this one?" she asked, turning the screen. It was a Reddit thread titled, "What's Real Power?" This, when you don't have to announce who you are. He smiled without showing teeth. Make sure her daughters get the custom stationery sets. One for writing, one for designing. No labels, no brands. The assistant paused. Do we add a name on the note? No. Keep it blank. He looked out the window. Let them believe it came from Grace. Back in Lake Forest, Mila and Ilara were dancing in socks on the hardwood floor. Naila let them. She kept the music low, the windows open, the cameras off. She didn't take a single photo that day. No uploads, no captions. Because what happened wasn't content, it was repair. At 2:45 p.m., a different headline surfaced. A mid-tier blog had found an anonymous source, likely a jealous assistant at one of the boutiques, who leaked a few details. They had tried to make it sound scandalous, tried to spin the idea that the woman in question must have paid off city officials. But buried in the article was one line. Eyewitnesses said the woman never raised her voice, never mentioned her name, and spent most of the time watching her daughters read books. And somehow, that made the entire story even stronger. Because it wasn't about who she knew, it was about who she chose not to be. At 4 p.m., Brantley called again. This time, he left a voicemail. Naila, I've been seeing things online. I didn't know about the gifts. Kalina didn't. She said it was a misunderstanding. Listen, if you want to talk, I'm here. I miss the girls. I want to fix things. Naila listened to the whole message, then deleted it. At 6 p.m., she lit the fireplace. She handed each girl a gift, modest, wrapped in brown paper and twine. They opened them together, matching carved wooden bookmarks and journals stamped with a single gold-embossed symbol, a tree with strong roots. Ilara ran her fingers over hers. It's the same tree from the store, right? Naila nodded. They wanted you to have something to grow into. Mila whispered. I like that no one else has one. You do, Naila said, and that makes it yours. At 7 p.m., as the girls played beside the fire, Naila stood on her porch with a mug in hand. Snow had finally begun to fall. Across the street, lights glowed warmly in the windows of her neighbors' homes. She wasn't wearing anything fancy. No makeup, no diamonds, but she felt more powerful than she ever had. Not because of what had happened, but because of what she chose not to become. By nightfall, the city buzzed with more curiosity than answers. Still no name, no footage, no leaks. Just speculation. Someone claimed it was a royal family's discreet visit. Another said it was a billionaire rewarding his secret daughter. One theory even suggested it was a staged social experiment. But none of them were close. And the only 3 people who knew the truth were sitting in a quiet house an hour north of the chaos, eating buttered noodles in their pajamas and watching a holiday movie. Naila sat between her daughters on the couch. She wasn't thinking about Kalina, or Brantley, or the blogs. She was listening to the sound of her girls laughing again. That was the victory. Elsewhere, Kalina scrolled, relentlessly. She had refreshed her mentions so many times, her screen left a faint glare in her vision. She wasn't being talked about, not even negatively. She wasn't in the story. And to her, that was the worst punishment. She'd tried everything. Better angles, sharper outfits, softer captions. She mimicked humility when she had to. But this was a different kind of power. Naila hadn't posted once. She hadn't defended herself. She hadn't even acknowledged the stunt from the party. And yet, every comment, every repost, every whispered headline carried her imprint. Naila's. Without needing to lift a finger, Brantley sat on the edge of his bed, elbows on knees, scrolling too. The voicemail he left Naila earlier that day still weighed on him. She hadn't replied. He knew she wouldn't. Because she no longer needed to argue. She had proven her point without a single conversation. For years, he told himself she wasn't built for his world. She didn't chase invitations, didn't network, didn't fit. But now, the city was writing think pieces about a woman who redefined power with stillness. And Brantley? He'd become a man who blended in next to a loud woman, watching the fallout of decisions he once dismissed as harmless. He stood, walked to the window, and tried to remember the last time his daughters had looked up at him with trust. He couldn't. Not clearly. Meanwhile, in a small office above a textile shop Naila once designed for, someone posted a thread. My firm worked with a consultant named Naila Rowe a few years ago. Quiet. Never wanted credit. One of the best we ever had. We offered her a long-term deal. She turned it down because she wanted to stay close to her kids. We thought it was a loss for us. Now I see it wasn't. We weren't her purpose. They were. The thread got 40,000 likes overnight. No hashtags, no photos, just story. Naila didn't know about any of this. Not yet. She was tucking her daughters in, reading one more page of a bedtime story, running her fingers through their hair as they settled in. Alara turned over. Mommy? Yes, baby. What does grace mean? Naila paused. It means holding yourself high when others try to bring you low. Alara blinked sleepily. Is that what you did yesterday? Naila nodded. I tried to. Mila added softly, you didn't yell, but it felt like the whole world still listened. Naila didn't answer. She kissed both their foreheads. I don't need the world to listen. Just you. That night, Naila stood in her sunroom, the lights off, her laptop open only to draft patterns. Nothing more. But she didn't touch the keyboard. She watched the snow fall. She breathed in silence. The city would keep talking. The press would keep guessing. But her girls had gone to sleep feeling whole again. Not because someone had punished their father's mistress, but because someone had made them feel seen without asking to be watched. At the same moment, Jalen sat by the hotel window, sipping tea. His assistant had just confirmed Naila's daughters would receive a handwritten note with their education grants in a few days. No signature, no logo, no explanation. He didn't need thanks. He didn't want credit. He had built his empire from absence, and it was only when someone like Naila called that he remembered why he had power in the first place, to make sure silence could still defend what shouting never could. Brantley tried calling one last time. The phone rang, then rang again. Naila picked it up, but didn't say a word. Neither did he. For a full 5 seconds, they both breathed. Then he spoke. They're happy, aren't they? Naila said nothing. They didn't even look back when they left. Still, nothing. He tried again. I didn't mean for that to happen. Naila replied, quiet and even. You didn't stop it either. Click. Call ended. Kalina saw a headline before bed. The most powerful woman in Chicago this week never showed her face. She screamed into her pillow, because nothing she said online mattered now. Naila hadn't said a word, and yet, she'd spoken volumes. Christmas morning came softly. No alarms, no rush, just the sound of tiny feet padding down the hallway and quiet giggles drifting into Naila's room. She lay still in bed for a moment, listening. The warmth under her covers contrasted the cold air brushing through the cracked window. The scent of cinnamon, left over from last night's stovetop potpourri, still lingered. She sat up, slowly, like the day deserved intention. Downstairs, Mila and Alara were whispering to each other near the tree. Not squealing, not tearing through wrapping paper. Whispering. She walked down the stairs in her robe, hair tied back, house silent except for the soft, instrumental Christmas music playing in the background. The girls had found the small stack of gifts she placed under the tree after midnight. Each one wrapped simply handwritten tags tied with twine. They hadn't touched them. Instead, they were sitting cross-legged on the rug, flipping through their new journals. Naila paused. You two okay? They looked up. Can we open one now? Alara asked. Of course. Mila gently unwrapped the smaller box first. Inside was a wooden pencil set, each pencil engraved with a word: hope, patience, kindness, courage, stillness, truth. Alara reached into her own box, pulling out a miniature wooden calendar. Each month illustrated by hand, each page printed on thick recycled paper. I love this, she said. Not screamed, Not exaggerated, just real. Naila smiled, stepping closer. Some gifts don't sparkle, they stay with you longer. The girls nodded. They understood now. At the same time, across the city, Kalina stared at her screen. Not at the news, not at the trending topics, not even at the blogs still trying to identify the woman behind the quiet shutdown. She stared at her reflection in a black mirror. No makeup, no ring on her finger, no one texting her back. Brantley had gone silent since the night before. He said he needed to sort out some things. She knew what that meant. She scrolled through Naila's old Instagram page. Still live, still simple. Just photos of sunsets, books, sketches, nothing boastful. And now, Kalina realized, that silence wasn't emptiness. It was structure. It was foundation. It was presence without performance. And it won. In his condo, Brantley stood over a pan of scrambled eggs, burning them. He hadn't cooked in years, not since before he married Naila, back when he still did ordinary things. He stared at the pan as the eggs hardened and dried. Then he turned off the stove. He walked to the living room, sat on the couch, and for the first time he felt the absence of something he didn't know he'd miss, not just Naila, but the sound of trust. He'd heard it once in the girls' laughter, back when they were toddlers and he used to come home early just to make them giggle. He couldn't remember the last time he made them laugh. He pulled out his phone and opened the photo they'd drawn him last Christmas. Stick figures, all smiling. One said, Dada. The other said, Mama. Two little ones held hands. He had thrown it in a drawer. Now it felt like a mirror he didn't want to look into. Back at Naila's, the girls were now drawing again. Mila was sketching a storefront. Ilara was writing words on the side of it. Naila peeked over their shoulders. What's that? Our own shop, Ilara said. Like the one from the fancy day. But not for selling, Mila added. Just for making people feel safe. Naila's throat tightened. That's beautiful, she whispered. We're calling it The Quiet Place, Ilara said proudly. Only kids can design stuff. And grown-ups have to be kind, or they can't come in. Naila smiled. That's a rule I'd follow. The front door buzzed. She wasn't expecting anyone. She opened it carefully. A delivery person stood on the step, holding a slim box, neatly wrapped in matte black paper. No logo, no card. Ms. Rowe. Yes. He nodded, handed her the box, and walked back to the car. Inside, she opened it. A single envelope sat inside, handwritten on the front, to the mother who reminds the world what love looks like. Inside, 2 letters. One addressed to Ilara, the other to Mila. Both were handwritten in delicate ink, each line crafted with care. The first read, the way you notice what others don't will make you a leader one day. Trust your quiet. The second read, you don't have to sparkle to be the light. You already are. No signature. No return address, just warmth, wrapped in anonymity. Naila folded the letters and placed them back in the box. Then she sat beside her daughters. Girls, she said softly, you got something in the mail. They opened them slowly. Read each word. Then hugged each other, tightly. Mommy, Mila asked. Yes, sweetheart. Was it him? Naila didn't answer. She didn't need to. Ilara whispered, Thank you for picking the right people. And Naila, without tears or applause, nodded. Always. The rest of the day passed in quiet layers. Naila didn't bake cookies, didn't plan any Pinterest-level activities, didn't force a perfect holiday. She let the hours breathe. Ilara sat by the window with her journal, sketching ornaments from memory. Mila built a miniature tree out of popsicle sticks and glue. Naila made grilled cheese and tomato soup for lunch. Not because it was festive, but because it was warm. She liked this life. Small, intentional, real. And though the city still buzzed about what had happened the day before, none of that reached her front door. But across town, someone else wasn't ready to let it go. Brantley stood in the middle of his study, phone in hand, pacing. He had typed out 6 messages to Naila, and deleted them all. Too defensive. Too late. Him. He finally sat at his desk and opened his drawer. There it was, the card his daughters had handed him at the tree lighting event, still unopened. He pulled it out, unsealed the envelope. Inside was a folded piece of red paper, scribbled with glitter pen. "Dear Daddy, we love you. We hope you still love us, even if we don't sparkle like Kalina." From Mila and Ilara. His chest tightened. He read it again, and again. He had missed it all. Not just the moment, the message, but the entire point of fatherhood. And now, they didn't even look at him the same. At that same moment, Nayela was sorting through fabric swatches on the floor. Ilara watched from the couch. "Are you working again?" Nayela nodded. "Just organizing. Is it for someone else?" "No. This time, it's for me." Ilara tilted her head. "What are you making?" "I'm thinking of reopening the studio." Mila looked up from the kitchen table. "Really?" Nayla smiled gently. "Only for clients I believe in." She didn't say it out loud, but in her mind she finished the thought, "and never for people who treat others as disposable." By mid-afternoon, the snow had thickened outside. The street was quiet. No cars, no noise, only the soft hush of winter pressing against the windows. The doorbell rang again. This time, it wasn't a delivery. It was a woman, early 40s, tall, with dark brown curls pulled into a loose bun. She wore a coat that looked expensive but not flashy. She held a simple gift bag. "Hi," she said, her voice gentle. "Are you Ms. Rowe?" Nayela stepped forward cautiously. "Yes. I'm Olivia. I used to work with Mr. Verick. I don't anymore. But he told me something last year, and I thought of you today." Nayela didn't speak. Waiting. Olivia handed her the gift bag. "I left the industry, started a mentorship program for young women who've been overlooked, and I wanted you to have the first invitation." Nayela opened the bag. Inside, a soft-bound book. Title, "For the Ones Who Were Never Loud Enough to Be Seen, But Built Everything Anyway." Nayela swallowed. "I've read your designs," Olivia said. "I know you never signed your name on the big ones, but we remember. People like us always remember." Nayela blinked. "Why now?" Olivia smiled. "Because no one forgets the woman who teaches the world how to restore value without noise." They said goodbye. No fanfare, no press. Just a woman giving another woman a chance to shape more lives. Nayela closed the door softly. Inside, Mila had seen the exchange from the window. "Who was that?" Nayela turned. "Someone who remembered me before I became invisible." Ilara stood beside her. "But you're not invisible now." Nayela nodded. "You're right. I'm not," and that was the first time she believed it fully. In his apartment, Brantley sat on the edge of his daughter's drawings, still, unread letters, and a heart he hadn't learned how to speak from in years. He picked up his phone and typed one last message to Nayla. He didn't expect a reply. "I didn't defend them. I didn't defend you. And I know now that being present doesn't mean being visible, it means being responsible. I don't deserve a response, but I will show up better, starting now, even if it's from a distance." He hit send, put the phone down, and for once, didn't wait to be forgiven. He just chose to be better. Back in Lake Forest, Nayela never read the message, not because she didn't care, but because she didn't need closure from someone who didn't protect her when it counted. She had her own closure now, in the quiet, in her daughter's laughter, in the knowledge that the world had watched cruelty fail and grace win. That night, she lit a candle by the window. The girls danced in the living room to soft music. A journal lay open on the floor with one sentence written in Ilara's careful hand. "Sometimes the strongest sound is the one that never needed to be loud." Nayla looked up at the ceiling, whispered a thank you, not to Jalen, not to the city, but to herself, for staying steady when everything inside her wanted to burn. Have you ever had to protect your peace without raising your voice? Do you believe real strength is quiet, and real love doesn't need permission to show up? If you've ever chosen dignity over drama, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment below. What's the most powerful thing you've done silently? Subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more narratives where power doesn't shout. It proves the day after Christmas was colder than expected. A thin frost had settled over the rooftops of Lake Forest, turning the neighborhood into a quiet painting. The streets were empty, the holiday rush finally over. Naila stood in her kitchen, stirring warm milk into her tea. The girls were upstairs, still in pajamas, humming along to a holiday cartoon. The quiet no longer felt like absence. It felt like control. Her phone buzzed once. A message from an unknown number. "Your Grace changed something this week. I hope you felt it. No name, no need." She smiled faintly, turned the phone face down, and opened her notebook. An hour later, while the girls colored beside the fireplace, Naila opened her laptop and stared at a blank document titled Proposal. The quiet design studio. She hadn't taken on private clients in nearly a year. After the divorce, she had only accepted work she could manage between school drop-offs and weekend errands. But the holiday had shifted something. The right people still remembered. And for the first time, her daughters saw her fully, not just as a mother, but as a woman who made the world shift quietly. Elara padded over in fuzzy socks. "Can we help with your designs this time?" Naila looked up. "You want to? We're good at colors," Mila added from across the room. "And I know what fabrics feel softest." Naila closed her laptop. "Then you're hired." Downtown, Kalina stared at her own computer screen. For the first time in weeks, there were no new headlines about her. No media mentions, no style spotting with Kalina Culden write-ups, just silence. She hated it. Even worse, Brantley had been distant. He left that morning without saying goodbye and hadn't answered her texts. She scrolled his name in her phone, then scrolled back up to Naila's profile. Still public, still untouched, still painfully elegant in its restraint. Kalina muttered under her breath, "You win this round." But even she knew it wasn't a round. It was a reset, and Naila hadn't needed to fight for it. Brantley, on the other hand, was in Midtown, standing outside a cafe he used to take Naila to before they were married. Before everything changed. Before he became someone whose silence hurt more than his words ever could. He hadn't slept well. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the twins holding those empty boxes. He pulled out his phone and opened his sent messages. "I will show up better, even from a distance." Still no response. But that was okay. He wasn't owed one. He stepped inside the cafe, ordered a tea Naila used to like, and paid for it. Not for her. Not to send it. Just to remember. That afternoon, Naila and the girls started cutting fabric samples for a new mood board. No pressure, no deadlines, just shared ideas. Mila picked a warm amber tone. Elara chose a soft grey. Naila let them decide. They were creating not for approval, but for expression. And Naila felt something unlock, her past meeting her present, her career, her motherhood, her silence, her voice, all in the same room. She got up, went to the drawer, and pulled out the original sketchbook she hadn't touched since leaving the design firm. The first page held a simple line written in her own hand. "Beauty is how softly a thing can speak and still be heard." She whispered to herself, "You never stopped being relevant." Meanwhile, Jalen stood at the edge of a rooftop garden above his Chicago penthouse. A light breeze cut through the cold air. He wasn't a man who needed updates. But one of his aides had quietly delivered a summary of the past few days. He'd smiled at the part where the daughters were seen walking with journals. He didn't want recognition, but he wanted to make sure Naila never again questioned the reach of her worth. He made a quick note to double the education grant set aside in the twins' trust. Then he set his phone down and walked inside. That night, Naila tucked the girls into bed, but they weren't quite ready to sleep. Mila asked, "Will people forget what happened?" Naila shook her head. "People forget noise faster than they forget peace." Elara turned toward her. "Does Kalina know?" Naila paused. "She knows enough. And Daddy?" Naila smoothed the blanket over them. "I think he's starting to understand." The girls nodded. content. They didn't need revenge. They had repair. And for children, that was more powerful than anything else. Naila couldn't sleep. She stepped out onto the back porch, wrapped in a heavy cardigan, tea in hand. The snow had softened into icy glitter on the lawn. The sky was still, deep blue and cloudless. She sat on the step, letting the cold bite her skin a little, just enough to stay grounded. So much had changed in 3 days. Not externally, there were no press at her door, no news vans in the driveway, but inwardly, something had settled. Not peace, not relief, ownership. For years, she'd watched Kalina take pieces of her identity, her last name, her daughter's attention, her place at events, her seat beside Brantley. And she let her, not out of weakness, but because she believed she didn't need those things to stay whole. But what happened with those gift boxes? That had crossed a line. A silent war had been started, and without lifting her voice, Naila had ended it. With quiet, with grace, with presence, and most importantly, with protection. Her phone buzzed. She checked it. A new email. No subject. She almost deleted it, assuming spam. But the sender name stopped her. J. 5th. She opened it. Subjectless. Body simple. Stillness doesn't mean small. Some buildings have no signs, but carry entire cities on their backs. J. Naila read it twice. Then she archived it. Not deleted. Not flagged. Saved. Because it didn't need a reply. Some acknowledgements are final by nature. Downtown, Kalina had packed her bags. She wasn't leaving permanently. Not yet. But the apartment had become too quiet. Brantley had stopped reacting. He didn't argue, didn't correct. He just observed. That silence, she used to crave it in Naila. Now, she feared it in Brantley. Kalina checked her makeup in the mirror one last time, then walked out with her suitcase. She didn't text him where she was going. Let him wonder. She would be back, maybe, but she'd never be able to control the narrative again. Because for the first time, people saw her, not through filters or captions. They saw the difference between attention and value, and she didn't like what they found. Brantley walked into the girls' old playroom and stood in front of a shelf Naila had built years ago. On it, tiny hand-sewn puppets, fabric fruits, a cardboard house the twins used to play in. He reached for a small photo tacked to the side, Mila and Alara covered. In paint, both looking up at someone not shown in the frame. But he knew who was holding the camera. Naila had always stood behind, holding everything together, while he stood beside Kalina, convincing himself he was evolving. But he hadn't evolved. He had escaped from something grounded and stepped into noise. He took out his phone and did something he hadn't done in 2 years. He opened his gallery, searched for the album titled Before. There, he found dozens of moments he'd forgotten. Naila feeding the twins with one arm while sketching with the other. Naila asleep on the couch with both girls on her chest. Naila smiling, head back, before the pressure of his lifestyle had hardened her edges. He stared at the photos for a long time. Then, without thinking, he created a new album. Now, and he saved the photos there. Not to post, not to use, just to remind himself what real looked like. Naila returned inside, pulled on socks, and sat down to finish her studio proposal. The header read, "The quiet studio for design that speaks without shouting." She didn't pitch herself. She didn't list credentials. She began with a paragraph. In a world where volume wins headlines, this studio will honor restraint. We design with intentionality, led by women who've built without applause, and children who see without filter. She paused, then added a final line. Let this be the space where value returns to the overlooked. She clicked save. Upstairs, Mila and Alara had drifted off, but one journal lay open on the bed. A note written in large print, "Mom doesn't fight battles, she just ends them." Naila found it an hour later when checking on them. She didn't cry. She simply folded the page gently, slipped it into her sketchbook, and whispered, "Exactly." The next morning, Naila dropped the girls off at a local art workshop. It was hosted by a community center just a few blocks from their home, a small, unassuming brick building with murals painted along the side by neighborhood kids. Mila and Ilara were eager to go, not for attention, not for spotlight, just to be around other kids who liked to make things with their hands. Before they stepped out of the car, Naila leaned back from the driver's seat. No matter what anyone says, she told them, you two carry your own light. You don't need permission to shine. They smiled, not because it was sweet, but because they believed her. Back downtown, Brantley sat in a meeting he had no interest in. The quarterly pitch deck was on screen. Slides rolled past, investments, market shares, PR damage control from the last press scandal involving Kalina's offhand comments about traditional parenting. He didn't say a word. He just kept thinking about those cards the girls made, the ones he had ignored. His assistant leaned in mid-meeting. Sir, there's a quiet media rumor circulating. One of the boutique insiders confirmed the private holiday event had something to do with a textile designer. He turned his head. A name? No. They said the individual declined to be named or acknowledged. But some are calling it an elegant act of retaliation. He raised a brow. Elegant, discreet, powerful, no fingerprints. But felt, he nodded slowly, eyes dark with realization. That was her. Of course it was. At the art center, Naila sipped coffee in the waiting area, flipping through a few design notes. She wasn't trying to start a business for attention. She was building space. Space where no one had to audition for dignity. She'd begun mapping the layout, a studio with natural lighting, shelves low enough for children to reach, and a long table where ideas, not titles, sat at the head. Her mind wandered to Jalen again. She hadn't seen him in years, had only spoken twice since the holiday incident, but his presence lingered in every corner of this new season. Not as a shadow, not as a hero, as a reminder that power used quietly can still move cities. In the background, a mother beside her whispered to another, "Did you hear about those luxury stores last week?" "Yeah." Some mystery woman shut them down for her kids. No press, no logos. I heard she didn't even post about it. No name dropped, just did it and disappeared. Naila didn't flinch, didn't insert herself, just turned the page in her notebook. If people learned anything from that week, let it be that you don't need to shout to shift a room. Elsewhere, Kalina sat in a rented condo she'd found on the north side. Her PR team had gone quiet. Her brand deals were paused until further notice. The silence was suffocating. She typed a new caption draft on her phone. Sometimes the loudest ones are the most misunderstood. Then deleted it. She opened Naila's profile again. No new posts, no stories, just peace. It wasn't fair. She had tried so hard to become visible. But now, the world was intrigued by the woman who didn't need to be. And Kalina realized something she hadn't admitted aloud. She had played a loud game. But Naila had changed the rules. Meanwhile, Brantley left the boardroom. He didn't give excuses, didn't fake an emergency. He just left. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like the one with the power. He felt like a man watching someone he once discarded quietly redefine everything he thought mattered. He didn't need to be forgiven. But he did want to do one thing: tell his daughters the truth. Not the version Kalina rehearsed, not the one he edited for comfort, just the truth. Because even if they never gave him a second chance, he wanted them to know he finally saw what mattered, and her name was Naila. Brantley didn't send a car this time. He drove himself. It had been months since he last stepped foot in Lake Forest, and even then it was brief. A pickup, a drop-off, no real presence, no real effort. This time, he parked down the street, palms sweating, heart beating faster than it had in any boardroom. He wasn't here to reclaim anything. He wasn't here to argue. He was here because for the first time in his adult life, he understood what it meant to be humbled. He walked up the driveway slowly, stopping in front of the small gate where his daughters once used to draw chalk hearts. He could see them now through the window, Mila on the couch, reading, Ilara at the table, drawing. Naila walked into view, holding a mug, unaware he was outside. Brantley breathed in and knocked, not once, but gently, twice. Naylor opened the door slowly. Her expression stayed neutral. She didn't look surprised. She looked centered. "Brantley," she said. "I know I should have called," he replied. "But if I did, you wouldn't have let me speak." She crossed her arms. "I'm not here to apologize," he added quickly, "because an apology feels too small." She tilted her head, waiting. "I'm here to tell the truth." In front of them, Naylor stepped back. "Leave your ego at the door." He nodded. "I did." Inside, the girls looked up. "Daddy?" Elara stood, confused. Brantley crouched down to their level. He didn't touch them. He didn't rush in. "I was wrong," he said. "At the party, at so many other moments. I saw you shrink when you opened those boxes, and I did nothing." Myla blinked. "You saw?" He nodded. "Yes. And I was too weak to stop it. That wasn't okay. None of it was." Naylor stayed in the background. She didn't speak. "I can't undo it," Brantley continued, "but I want you both to know something. None of what happened, none of what Kalina said or did, was about you. It was about people who didn't understand value." Elara whispered, "Mommy does." He smiled. "She always has. And I didn't protect that. I didn't protect her. Or you." The girls stayed silent. "I'm not asking you to forget, or even forgive. I just wanted you to hear me say it with no excuse behind it." Myla finally stood. She walked over, placed something in his hand. It was the photo card they'd made him that night. He opened it again. This time, he read every line. He didn't cry, but something in him softened, enough that even Naylor noticed it. Later, after Brantley left, Elara turned to Naylor. "Did you believe him?" Naylor paused. "I believe he meant it. Do you still love him?" She didn't flinch. She didn't stall. "No, I love who I thought he could be." "But that's not the same." Myla nodded. He looked like he wanted to cry. Naylor knelt between them. "Sometimes when people finally see what they broke, they grieve the person who stayed strong without them." Elara whispered, "That's you." Naylor kissed her cheek. "That's all of us." That night, the girls went to bed a little quieter than usual. Not from sadness, but from processing. And Naylor sat at her desk, opening the file labeled Quiet Studio Launch Plan. She stared at the page, then added a line to the bottom of her mission statement. "We don't design for validation, we design for restoration." Then, she hit save. And finally, sleep came. 2 days after Brantley's visit, Naylor received a handwritten envelope in the mailbox. No return address, no digital stamp, no courier tracking, just real ink on real paper, sealed with care. She opened it slowly. Inside was a card, deep green with gold trim. A single sentence was written in the center. Sometimes the echo is more powerful than the original sound. No name. But she knew the handwriting. Jalen's. She placed it in the drawer with her journal. No need to respond. No next step. Just presence acknowledged. The world had moved on from the story. But some legacies don't need headlines to live. They just keep unfolding in quiet places. That morning, the girls ran into the kitchen carrying a small flyer from school. "Mom, they want us to bring something that represents our family's strength," Myla said. Naylor raised a brow. "When?" "Tomorrow," Elara added. "It has to fit in a shoebox." Naylor smiled, thinking. A shoebox wasn't much. But then again, they'd already lived through what fake gift boxes could represent. This time, it would mean something. Later that afternoon, they sat on the floor of the sunroom surrounded by fabric scraps, markers and ribbon. Myla chose a strip of wool. "This is for warmth." Elara picked a broken zipper from an old coat. "This is for fixing things." Naylor handed them a photo of the three of them. "This is for us." They wrapped it all in soft white paper and wrote one sentence on the box lid. "We don't need loud to be strong." Naylor paused, then added something at the bottom corner, in small, simple lettering. "The Row Girls." Downtown, Brantley sat in the back of a town car on his way to a silent partners' dinner. The streets were still packed with holiday leftovers, families returning, gifts, tourists taking photos, influencers posting from rooftop lounges. But his thoughts weren't on business. They were on a different kind of visibility. He hadn't heard from Naila since his visit, but he hadn't expected to. Some silences weren't doors closing. They were standards being set. He looked at his phone again, scrolled past his notifications, landed on the picture Ilara had drawn inside the card. The stick figure of him had a speech bubble. "I'm sorry." He had never said it out loud, and maybe he never would. But every quiet step forward now, every right decision, would be shaped by that unspoken truth. Meanwhile, Kalina scrolled through social media again. Her following hadn't dropped, but engagement had. No one cared about curated photos anymore. Not since the quiet shutdown became a whispering legend. She couldn't compete with a woman who never entered the game. She had tried to humiliate Naila. Instead, she'd made her unforgettable. Back in Lake Forest, Naila lit a candle near the window. Her hands moved slowly over her journal, sketching designs for the studio's soft launch. She planned to start with a single session. Invite mothers and daughters. No press, no influencers, just makers. She would call it the first thread. It wasn't about success. It was about stitching safety into something real. And she would never again apologize for not showing up the way the world demanded. Because now, she knew. Quiet was a decision, not a limitation. The studio smelled like lavender and fresh pine when Naila opened its doors for the first time since she reclaimed it. The hardwood floor had been refinished. The shelves, once bare, were now filled with textures and tools she had used over the years. But this time, they weren't hidden in back rooms or locked drawers. Everything was open, simple, accessible. The sign outside didn't have her name, just the words, "Quiet Studio," for work that speaks softly. She didn't post about it, didn't email old clients. She sent 3 invitations, one to Olivia, the woman who had left the industry and started mentoring others, one to her daughter's school art teacher, and one, unsigned, delivered to an address in Idaho. No please reply required, no schedule, just space. Inside, she laid out the materials for the first thread session. There were no seats assigned, no microphones, no panels, just a long table. And beside each setting, a blank fabric square, a needle, and a single note card that read, "Start with what you couldn't say." The first guest arrived quietly, a young mother with a shy daughter clinging to her side. The little girl looked around, curious but hesitant. Naila smiled. There's no wrong way to begin. The girl sat, picked up the fabric, stared at it, then slowly started stitching the outline of a cloud. By noon, 5 more pairs had arrived. Some stitched, some just talked. Others wrote instead of sewing. There was no pressure to explain, no cameras, no rules about outcomes. Only one shared understanding. You do not have to raise your voice to take up space. Meanwhile, Brantley passed by a newsstand on his walk home. He paused. The latest magazine cover showed yet another socialite trying to trend with. The headline, "Silent Strength, the year's most unexpected power move." Inside was a full article speculating about the woman who had quietly shut down Chicago's most exclusive district. Still, no names. But one paragraph stood out. The true force behind this story never confirmed or denied her identity. She let the silence speak for her. And that silence reshaped the conversation around presence, dignity, and what it means to be powerful. Brantley put the magazine down. There was nothing more for him to say. Naila had already said everything, without uttering a single word. Back at home, Myla and Ilara sat at the table, working on a collage for their shoebox project. Naila watched from the hallway. She didn't interrupt, just observed. Ilara turned toward her. "Mummy." "Yes? Do you think people still remember what happened with the boxes?" Naila walked over, sat beside them. "I don't know," she answered. "But I do know they'll remember how you stood after it." Myla added, We didn't even have to tell anyone. Naila smiled. That's because your worth isn't up for discussion. It's permanent. The girls nodded, then went back to gluing paper and shapes to the sides of the box. Not for display, not for revenge, but as proof that healing had taken root. Upstairs in her bedroom, Naila's journal lay open. The last page held one simple sentence she had written the night before. The best revenge is becoming unforgettable without ever needing to be seen. She closed the book. And the chapter. The new year arrived quietly, just the way Naila liked it. No parties, no fireworks, just a slow evening at home with the twins, a warm stew on the stove, and a string of soft lights wrapped around the banister. They stayed up until 10, not midnight. Because beginnings didn't need countdowns to matter. When the girls were asleep, Naila lit a single candle, poured herself a cup of tea, and sat by the window in her sunroom, legs curled under her. She wasn't making resolutions. She was honoring what she'd already rebuilt. A family rooted in dignity, a studio birthed from restraint, and a peace that couldn't be purchased, only lived. The next morning, her phone buzzed. A message from an unfamiliar number. Expect a delivery today. It's for the studio. Oh, Naila didn't ask questions. She simply replied, "Received. Thank you." At 10:15 a.m., a small truck pulled up outside the quiet studio. A driver stepped out, carrying 2 flat boxes and 1 narrow envelope. He greeted her with a nod. "Are you Ms. Rowe?" "I am. Delivery from a Mr. Verick. Requested no media, no signature." Naila blinked. "Thank you." He handed her the envelope and left. Inside, she opened it carefully. No letter, just a thin certificate, printed in understated gold. Quiet Studio has been awarded a legacy endowment for work in emotional restoration through design. No interviews required. Unnamed benefactor. Naila stood still for a moment, then let out a slow breath, the kind that clears old fear. She opened the first flat box. Inside, 10 sketchbooks, each embossed with a single name, of a girl who had attended the first thread session. The second box contained fabric, custom woven, textured by hand, and dyed in soft, neutral tones. Tucked into the bottom was a single note card. For the ones who choose healing over spectacle, create for them. Let no one erase what you've made. Naila folded the card and slid it into her drawer. She didn't need proof of who sent it. Across the country, Jalen stood in his greenhouse, clipping back a branch of rosemary. His assistant stepped forward. The package was received. He nodded. "Any word back?" "No, just a thank you." "Good." He didn't look up. "She doesn't owe me more than that." A pause. "She's building something different now," the assistant added. "She always was," Jalen said. "The world just took a while to catch up." That same day, Brantley stood in his new office, smaller than the one he'd left. No corner views, no walls of glass, just a desk, a few photos of his daughters, and a reminder taped to his monitor, "Say less. Show more." He hadn't spoken to Naila since his visit, but he'd watched everything change from afar. Not her status, her center. She hadn't grown louder, but somehow she now occupied every room with a presence he'd never seen in her when they were together. That wasn't her becoming someone new. That was her finally being seen. Back at the studio, Naila gathered the new sketchbooks, wrapped them in linen cloth, and tied each with cotton string. She added no note, no signature. She delivered them by hand, school drop-offs, apartment lobbies, mailboxes left ajar. Quiet acts, no photos. That night, she returned home to 2 girls waiting on the stairs, eager to show her their latest idea. A quilt, each square stitched with something they remembered from the year. The velvet from their Christmas coats, a strip from the scarf Naila wore to the courthouse, thread from their school art show banner. Naila looked at it and smiled, not because it was perfect, but because it was real, and no one could take that from them. The following week, Naila received a phone call from an unknown number. She almost let it go to voicemail. but something made her pick it up. "Hello?" A pause. Then, "Naylor Rowe?" "Yes. This is Detective Charlin, South Chicago Division." Naylor straightened. "Yes? I'm calling to inform you that the department has officially closed the complaint filed against your former spouse. We found no further basis to continue the case regarding shared asset misrepresentation." She nodded slowly. "Understood. There's a note in the file," the detective added, "from one of the internal reviewers. Said something about your quiet cooperation being the reason this closed as cleanly as it did." Naylor didn't answer right away. Not because she was unsure, but because she had no need to gloat. She ended the call politely, folded her hands in her lap, and looked out the window. Some battles don't need to be announced. They only need to be finished. Later that evening, Myla and Ilara walked into the studio after school. They hung their coats, placed their sketchbooks on the front table, and took their usual seats near the corner window. Naylor watched them begin to work. No instructions, no need for her to explain anything. They understood now. The process, the space, the quiet. Ilara pulled out a small felt piece she'd been stitching. It was rough, uneven, but in the middle was a phrase she had stitched carefully, letter by letter. "I made it through." Naylor walked over, sat beside her. "You did," she whispered, and hugged her daughter. The next day, an email arrived. Subject: "Would you speak?" It was from a women's advocacy nonprofit in San Francisco. They had read about the thread sessions through a silent attendee who submitted a reflection letter. They wanted Naylor to deliver a short keynote about reclaiming dignity without confrontation. Naylor stared at the email. There was an irony in the ask. They wanted her to speak, because she hadn't. She closed the email, didn't delete it, just marked it unread. Some things weren't answers, they were options, and she would choose if and when she needed to. That weekend, the studio held its third thread session. 12 guests this time, a mix of ages, genders, histories, but every hand moved differently. Some stitched with urgency. Others paused often. One man cried quietly as he pressed thread through fabric, one line at a time. Naylor didn't facilitate. She held space. That was enough. Outside, Ciaran Navarro's driver parked at the end of the block. He didn't enter the studio, didn't knock. He waited until the session ended and guests began leaving. Naylor stepped outside to lock the doors. She looked up, saw the black car. The window rolled down. Ciaran didn't smile. He never did. But he offered a nod, a gesture that meant something. She returned it. That was all. No promises, no partnerships, no threats. Just two people who had seen what silence could do and respected it. That night, Naylor and the girls curled up in bed with the quilt they'd started. They had added a new square, a plain white patch. No thread, no writing, just fabric. "What's this one for?" Myla asked. Naylor thought for a moment, then answered softly, "For everything we didn't have to say." They nodded and held her hands. Upstairs in her room, Naylor pulled out her journal. This time, she didn't write much. Just one question. What happens when peace becomes louder than pain? She didn't answer it. She closed the book, letting the question hang, because maybe the world needed fewer declarations and more honest pauses. Chicago's skyline disappeared often into silver fog. Streets glistened in the morning as ice hugged the pavement. But inside the quiet studio, warmth bloomed in small, deliberate ways. On the 10th thread session, Naylor didn't lay out needles. She placed books, old ones she'd found during the hardest year, when words were the only things that understood her. Each guest arrived and found a seat with a book waiting. On the inside flap, one line was handwritten. "Write your future in the margins." Some opened to blank spaces. Some flipped to chapters with underlined passages. Some closed the books immediately, eyes already full. Naylor said nothing. She didn't need to. A woman next to the window raised her hand quietly, not to ask for anything, but in recognition. Naylor met her eyes and nodded. They understood each other. That night, Brantley sat in his downtown loft, alone. No business calls, no court filings, no spin control. The silence that once unsettled him had now become familiar. He'd lost the performance that used to keep him busy. And in the void, something real was starting to ache. He reached for his phone, clicked on a photo of Myla and Ilara that Naila had sent weeks ago. No caption, just the girls painting together in the studio. He stared at it for a long time, then tapped out a message. "You've raised them into more than I ever imagined. I'm proud of you." Of them. He stared at the screen, didn't hit send. Instead, he set the phone down and walked out onto the balcony, letting the winter air hit him fully in the face. He closed his eyes and stayed there. No answers, no escape, just the cold truth of consequence. Meanwhile, Naila lit a small candle in her room. She did it every night now, not for prayer, not for ritual, but as a marker, a way of saying, "You survived the day." She wrote a note to herself, "He doesn't have to be sorry for me to be free." She folded it into her journal, shut the cover, and exhaled slowly. Freedom wasn't loud. It didn't knock. It arrived like this, quiet, simple, and permanent. At school the next morning, Ilara brought in her shoebox for display. The teacher asked her to explain it. She didn't. She just opened the lid. Inside was the quilt square with her stitched words, "I made it through." That was enough. Across town, Ciaran Navarro stood at the edge of a new real estate development. He watched as crews worked to tear down the last of the high-end boutique row, a project Brantley once championed. He folded his hands behind his back. One of his associates approached. "Sir, they're ready for you to finalize the naming rights for the new gallery space." Ciaran looked down at the folder in his hand. He hadn't written anything yet. Then, on a blank line, he scribbled 2 words, "Quiet Studio." The associate paused. "But sir, that's..." Ciaran raised his hand. "No notes," and walked away. Snow fell lightly on the last Saturday before Christmas. Not heavy, just enough to coat the sidewalk in stillness. Naila didn't plan to open the studio that day, but she did. She left the door unlocked, turned the light on low, and placed only one thing on the center table, a small wooden frame. Inside it was a note she had once written during her worst year, a note she had never read aloud. It said, "Dignity is not something you fight for, it's something you refuse to give up." She stepped back. No guests arrived, but it didn't feel empty. It felt full, like the air knew how far she'd come. That afternoon, Myla and Ilara helped decorate the living room. The small tree blinked gently with warm lights. No big boxes, no staged photos, just their voices. Ilara sang quietly under her breath. Myla stuck a note onto the fridge that read, "We like it better like this." Naila saw it and said nothing. Later, when the girls went upstairs, she stepped outside. Wrapped in a soft coat, gloves, scarf, she looked across the street where someone had shoveled the sidewalk clean. A familiar car sat quietly at the curb. She didn't flinch, didn't walk toward it. The door opened. Brantley stepped out. Not in a suit, no briefcase, just a man. He didn't cross the street. He stood there, letting the moment speak first. She stayed where she was. Finally, he said, "I didn't come for closure. I came because I finally understand something." Naila tilted her head, waiting. He took one step closer. "You didn't destroy me. You rebuilt something I never had the courage to build for myself." She folded her arms, calm, grounded, and he nodded. "And I'll never ask you to open the door again. I just needed to say thank you for showing me what power really looks like." She didn't speak, didn't nod. She simply turned, walked back into her house, and closed the door behind her gently. No slam, no final word, just peace. Later that night, Naila sat at the edge of her bed, scrolling through her inbox. A single email stood out. Subject line, "From the publisher's desk. Quiet studio exhibit proposal." She clicked it open. Inside was a brief message. "Your work speaks louder than any press release ever could." We'd like to partner on a national exhibit, featuring only anonymous pieces submitted through the sessions. No names, no bios, just stories stitched into fabric. Naila blinked, slowly, then typed a reply, "Yes, but only if the first square is one of my daughters." She hit send, closed the laptop, and opened the window beside her bed. Cold air drifted in. The snow had stopped. Stillness remained. She lit the candle again, let it burn until the wax softened, then whispered the last words of her journal entry aloud. "Dignity has a new address. If you believe quiet power is the strongest kind, if you know that healing doesn't always scream but sometimes whispers, and if you've ever rebuilt yourself quietly while others watched for your collapse, then like, comment, and subscribe to Mr. Charles' Stories. Tell us, what did you survive without ever explaining? Because sometimes the silence is the story."